What a brilliant and insightful session. For us chartered accountants, the synonym of AI is Amish Thakkar, sir, because most of us, we have learned AI from him. And I would, as rightly said by sir, AI will not replace professionals, but professionals who use AI will replace those who do not. So friends, let us upskill ourselves with AI, and I extend our deepest gratitude to Amish Thakkar, sir, for being always there and to impart knowledge, practical insights, and enriching thoughts. So, sir, thank you. May I request all of you to carry a round of applause for Amish Thakkar, sir. Thank you so much, sir. With this, let us embark on our next session, which is again very, very important in CFO, CEO, and CEO CXO Roundtable Meet. Panel discussion on capital courage and control, the science and art of boardroom decision making. For this, may I request Regional Council colleague Pinky Kedia ma'am to come on the dais with our panelists. Jugal Mantri sir, Raghav Iyengar sir, Dilip Agrawal sir, and Naresh Biyani sir. And moderators Anand Lunkar sir.
Good evening. Now, we are at the end and last session of the day, we can say. It's the last but not the least. You all know that in boardroom it's very difficult to take the decision regarding capital and to control everything, and it needs lots of courage also. So there is an art and science behind these all three works, like capital, courage, and control. And we have with us to guide us about how to manage this, we have a speaker with us, CA Jugal Mantri, CA Raghav Iyengar, CA Dilip Agrawal, and moderator is CA, and CA Naresh Biyani ji, and moderator is CA Anand Lunkar. So please welcome with him, good round of applause, sir. I request you all to welcome them. So I want to introduce them formally. First, CA Jugal Mantri ji. Jugal Mantri is the director and CEO of Anand Rathi Global Finance Limited and has played a key role in building the NBFC business to a balance sheet size of over 25,000 crore. A rank holder chartered accountant with more than 30 years of experience, he specialized in strategic growth, fundraising, risk management, technology adoption, and digital transformation. He began his professional journey with Hari Bhakti and Company and Tata Finance Limited, building strong expertise across finance and corporate leadership. Mr. Mantri has completed the senior management program from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, and was honored with CA CFO for Best Emerging Corporate Award by ICI in 2024. Sir, we welcome you for this session. Raghav Iyengar ji is the CEO of 361 Asset with over 3 decades of experience in the financial service industry. He leads the strategic direction and growth agenda of the asset management business, overseeing product strategy, distribution, institutional investor relationship, risk management, and regulatory affairs. Prior to joining 361 Assets, he served as president and chief business officer at Axis Asset Management, leading retail and institutional business function. He has also held senior leadership roles at ICICI Prudential Asset Management and Tata Asset Management, contributing significantly to the growth of India's investment management sector. We welcome you, Raghavji, for that. Dilip Agrawal ji is the Chief Financial Officer of Tata Realty and Infrastructure Limited, with over 20 years of experience across real estate, financial service, and consultancy service sectors. Prior to this, he led finance and accounts for the residential business at K. Raheja Corp and played a key role in fund raising, divestment, and strategic stake sales transaction. At Religare, he was instrumental in the listing of Religare Health Trust on the Singapore Exchange, the first India healthcare asset-backed business trust listed on SGX. A merit-ranking chartered accountant, he secured AIR 15 in CA final and completed his BCom honors from Sri Ram College of Commerce, Delhi. Sir, welcome here. Naresh Biyani is the founder and CEO with over 16 years of experience in financial services and a strong track record in capital raising, treasury management, and business scaling. He has held leadership role with organizations including Incred, Edelweiss, Motilal Oswal Group, and Western Capital, successfully raising significant equity and debt capital across institutions. As the first CEO of Western Capital, he played a pivotal role in the establishing and scaling the company's operation. While at Edelweiss, he managed capital market relationship and facilitated fundraising exceeding USD 15 billion. A chartered accountant by qualification, he is also a member of Leader Excellence at Harvard Square, and he is recognized for his expertise in treasury, capital market, and financial strategy. So we welcome you, Naresh ji. Now the moderator. He's Anand Lunkar. He's the managing partner of ASB and Associates, a multidisciplinary firm with a global presence across Mumbai, Dubai, and USA. He's a chartered accountant with 15 years of experience. He specializes in tax structuring, M&A transaction, and strategic succession planning. Known for his expertise in NRI taxation and international business advisory, he serves as a trusted advisor to corporate and startups alike. He is also a mentor and thought leader committed to guiding organizations, inspiring future professionals and entrepreneurs. With this, we again want you to welcome all the moderator and speaker with good round of applause. And I request our WIC chairman to come forward to present memento to all the panelists and moderators.
Guys, we are in the program where we are seeking value creation. Let's have a big round of applause, and we need more and more energy from your side for this final panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Very good evening to all of you. No doubt, basically, first of all, that our session is between you and the dinner time. But trust me, we will enjoy our dinner dessert better post this session, because there will be a lot of learning, key takeaways as far as the boardrooms discussions are concerned. Whenever we talk about businesses, no doubt the businesses are built on capital, but the truth is that it requires, in order to make the business resilient and survivable, it requires enough courage as well as caution to help with the growth part of it. But as we've seen that across various boardrooms, a lot of these stalwarts has taken a high stake calls. Apart from that, balanced ambitions with governance, cautions with growth, and profitability with purpose. So let's hear it from the veterans. My first question is to all of you panelists that when we talk about the boardroom discussions, so because of this now, previously the boardroom discussions are more from the compliance point of view, but now the boardroom discussions evolves because of the disruption at the AI level, as well as apart from that, investor expectations, stakeholders expectations. Considering this geopolitical tension, how the boardroom decisions has been evolved compared to 5 years ago. Let's hear it from Raghav. Yeah.
Thank you, Anand. Saurabh, thank you so much. I know we are standing between you and dinner, so I'll try and keep this as quick as possible. But I must compliment Saurabh. He understood the power of boardroom discussion before I started speaking. I don't know if you realize what he did. He tipped the waiter before he started serving the food. So he gave us this beautiful set of awards, which Saurabh, thank you very much. So in some sense, you really motivated us to give us our best over here. Coming to what I think the board is doing, I think you're absolutely right, Anand. I think the last 10 years where I've been interacting with boards, it's been more mutual funds or rather investment management is very compliance oriented. Even today, 50% of our time we spend on compliance, risk management, etc. But I think today the big problem or the big opportunity in boards is that I think boards, you cannot sit on a problem anymore. I think a board has to take a decision quickly. I think maybe 5-10 years back you could take a chance by just saying, let's wait for some time and then, or let's get some more information. I think today the boards that act on information and then more importantly, learn from their mistakes, review their immediate managers, and then lastly, I think have a lot of trust. So I think that's the important thing in my discussion, and it really helped me personally that as soon as my board, especially the independent board, gets to know that, hey, there is a CA attached to this gentleman's name, it definitely improves the trust element over there. Yeah.
So very rightly said, Raghav.
I don't.
Yeah, now that's work. So now this is the corporate boardroom, the flavor we get from the Raghav. Now let's hear it from the family boardroom, which is running by Jugal Bhai. So how does this has been evolved as far as the decision making is concerned?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Anand. See, there are two things, like in last 3 decades, what we have seen, the changes, not only on the boardroom, even if you look at the Indian corporate sector. The whole corporate sector has undergone sea change, and it has attained the size and scale, which is multi-fold than what anyone who is sitting here, and all of us are master on number. So I'll just put number on the perspective that 10 years back, the Indian corporate sector or total revenue was about 25 lakh crore. The profitability was about 2 lakh crore. And the market capitalization was, say, around 30-35 lakh crore rupees. Now in 10 years, today when we are talking of, the annual corporate turnover has crossed 300 lakh crore. The profitability has crossed from 2 lakh crore, it has gone to 20 lakh crore rupees. Market capitalization is 475 lakh crore rupees. So that is the size which has changed for the Indian corporate sector. And if you'll talk about my own group, Anand Rathi Group, so 10 years back, our group revenue was about 325 crore rupees. And the PBT, which we had, was, say, about 20 crore rupees. And today, when I'm talking to you, the last year we have attained a revenue base of 5,000 crore rupees.
That's astounding. Basically.
And the PBT is of 1,400 crore rupees. So what does it signify? That when the size and scale of your company and the Indian corporate sector change, in fact, the boardroom dynamics also change accordingly. So 10 years back, the boardroom used to be like more promoter-centric, where everything used to revolve around the promoter. There it was like promoters intuitive based all the decision making based on their experience, based on their relationship, based on their networking, and whatever market insight or the business insight they used to have, they were the people who used to drive the board decision. But now in 10 years, it is no more based on the promoter intuition. It is largely now based on it is governance centric, the boards which you will see. And that is how things have evolved. Even after the Companies Act 2013 has come, now you see even the dynamics of the board has changed. The representation, independent director, representations of institutions, nominee directors, and the whole composition has changed. And on top of it, the number of committees which have been supporting the board. Earlier the board, and at the best, there used to be an audit committee. Now you see there are 10 plus committees, even as per LODR requirement, as well as from the Companies Act requirement. They keep on assisting board. So now the board decisions are no more promoter-centric. Those are largely governed by the governance, and it is more data-driven, more on the modeling, more on the analytics side, and then only the board comes to the decision. And that is how the whole composition, the decision-making which has undergone changes in my organization or across the corporate India.
So very rightly said, Jugal bhai, because whenever any stock market people speak, they always speak with the numbers. So that's a very fascinating thing. Now let's hear it from the group Tata CFO, Tata Realty CFO. As we all know that the Tata is from salt to software, length and breadth across various industries. So how this boardroom decision making evolved as far as this conglomerate is concerned? Over to you.
I think that's an easy one to at least address. I have been here for about just few years within Tata ecosystem, and I think it's amazing to see how this organization works, because to begin with, I think Tata means trust. And I think as part of many discussions, or almost the essence of most of the discussions that happen during the board meeting, is also how do we cater to the customer service, because I think that's the foremost part of it as business discussions. And when it comes to the recent changes as CFO, I think I have been overwhelmed with the changes that are happening in the regulations. It's like, and we are debt listed company, so yes, there are a lot of compliances that we have to do. And hence, to satisfy the questions of board members, I think what is becoming imperative, and coming back to the topic that we are talking about, how do we get the interplay of technology along with people that you're working? I think that is something that is very, very important, which is what board members are always looking forward to see, that how are we making it less people dependent to make it more system dependent or driven, so that there's less surprise element which is attached to things.
Okay. So now basically let's hear it from Raj, being a CEO of Capwise. What is your view in terms of how the decision making of the board has been evolved so far?
So Anand, I would like to answer in a different way. How the role of chartered accountants evolved in last 10 years in the boardroom, whether as an advisor, external person, or whether as an insider, as a CFO. So the role of the chartered accountants has evolved. I think 3 structural shifts which happened over the last 3 years. One is a regulatory density. The new regulation has make it more complicated for a chartered accountant to be precise on the all regulatory aspects of the whether it is a CARO, whether it is a SEBI, with its LODR, whether it's a related party transaction, whether related to the fraud reporting. So all the aspects of the reporting and regulatory changes required very, very much important role for a chartered accountant into the boardroom. Second is the speed of consequences. The speed of consequences, earlier some decision you used to make, the consequences can be a 2 year after or maybe a 1.5 year after. Now it's completely changed. In 2 weeks, there are short sellers, there are whistleblowers, there are NGOs, there are peoples. The wrong decision, a governance lapse can be a very, 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 you can say it is a immediate impactful for the company. It will not take a time kind of a thing like as a 2 year or 1.5 year to come out as a result of it. Third thing is a stakeholder expansion. Earlier the chartered accountants used to be managed the shareholders into 10 years back. Today they are not just managing a shareholder, but they are managing rating agencies, they are managing lenders, they are managing press, they are managing NGOs. So that's how the role of a chartered accountant in the boardroom is changed in the last 10 years.
So very rightly said, basically, there is a sea change happens in the boardroom decision making. So previously, even in the stock market, basically, the stock market can digest still a bad quarter, but they cannot digest a broken trust by the companies. So when we talk about the boardroom decision making, so Raghav, so which decision either you took or witnessed where courage matters more than the consensus in your journey?
So we run India's largest alternate asset management company. It's absolutely institutional owned. We are founding employees own 12%, the rest of it is institution. So trust is a very important part of our life. Also, like Anand Rathi, we've had some explosive growth, and that's largely thanks to participation by everyone in the Indian financial sector. So I've been blessed to be in this sector in the right time, in the right place. But I think I just like to take a small 2 minutes on an example. I think about 4 years back, we have an investment committee. It comes after a certain point, it comes to board to take a decision whether to invest or no. So, I mean, this is for all the chartered accountants in the room. Guys, they did a fantastic job. All the numbers stacked up, the security stacked up, everything worked. But frankly, I think in that boardroom, I think one or two interesting voices came out. And I think we didn't have the courage to back the promoter at that time. Fast forward to today, that same promoter is actually going through multiple NCLT cases. And effectively, our money would have got into a bit of a soup. So I think the important thing I like to say here is that sometimes the courage to say no doesn't get celebrated. A courageous yes gets reported a lot. If you see most newspapers, they talk about this bold decision that somebody took. But if you look back and see, the no's don't get any visibility at all. And if you take a maybe 10 to 15 year time span, especially in financial services, I think the value of a courageous no is much, much more than the value of a courageous yes.
Yeah.
Hence, I think it's very, very important again, and I think this is important for all the young chartered accountants. I think today CAs are not number crunchers anymore. You guys are actually the shock absorbers in the room. So sometimes you'll have to have that courage to set up and say that, yes, if something's not making sense number-wise, I think look at beyond the number and see how you can add to that decision, right?
So as Raghav rightly mentioned, that the courage to say no always matters the most in your difficult times. So that's the corporate boardroom point of view. Now let's hear it from the family boardroom point of view. Jugal ji, what kind of, you can say that the challenge or decision you took, which shows that the courage matters more than the consensus? Because in a family boardroom, a lot of times it is driven by emotions. But still, your view.
Many times you have to take the decision which are contrary to common belief. Like when we, as I said, that how we have progressed and grown in last 10 years, and when we were stepping up our growth, one of the things which we were considering that though we are sitting in Mumbai, which is the financial capital of the country, but there are two key costs in our services. The first cost is the manpower. The second cost is that the lease rentals or the property where we are housing our offices. And one of the idea which has come up that can we think of moving away our support services function outside Mumbai? And it was a challenging thing because everybody in the board, they were skeptical, and when the idea came, can we set it up in Jodhpur? Then everybody said, no, this will not make any sense. But when we were deliberating, the point was getting finance professional in Jodhpur is very easy. But what will happen in case if you are going to create the IT setup over there, whether you will get the engineers? And fortunately, in the same board meeting, we had Dr. Surendra Dave, who was the earlier chairman of UTI. He said he was also chairman of CMI. He said, we have got a CMI center in Jodhpur, where we have got number of engineers. The issue was, since we all were confined to our relationship in finance, we never thought that can we have the IT center also in Jodhpur. And today, mind you, with that decision, now we have got our Anand Rathi IT tower in Jodhpur, which employ more than 600 people, including finance and IT professional. So it was like a out-of-the-cup decision when we were thinking, and there was a lot of resistance and reservation from everyone that should we opt of going out or moving away from Mumbai and taking away these services outside Mumbai. But we took it, and in the hindsight, we can say that was one of the most worthy decisions. So I can keep on talking number of such decisions. We used to do consultancy. I remember one of the incidents where we were advisor to the Aruna Sugar. Okay. And they were debt-ridden. They were on their books. They had a debt of about 150 crore rupees 25 years back. And they were defaulting on servicing the debt. And they were contemplating, should we sell the Aruna Hotel, which is going to fetch 35 crore rupees, and they will be able to service their debt. But as a consultant, I simply asked them, what you are going to sell next year? This year you are going to sell your Aruna Hotel, and you will be able to service, but what you are going to do next year? And then we all sat back, we redrawn the number, and the final conclusion was, better you sell your sugar company, get rid of all the debt, and run your hotel business debt-free. And that has changed the fortune of the company. So these sort of decisions, when we discuss in board, and where we have the experienced people from different fields, and with their open questioning, it makes us to deliberate and revisit our number, we comes up with the right decision.
So, very well said, Jugalji, that it requires a very far-fetched vision whenever you plan it from a long-term basis. Now, let's hear it from Dilip. So, in your journey, what kind of decision you took or witnessed?
Yeah, so couple of them maybe I can just highlight. Like in my previous experience, it was a promoter-driven organization, which was K. Raheja Corp, which is a leading real estate developer. And for example, in this case, I was working on a residential project which we were looking to launch, and we were looking to do the underwriting at the pricing at which it will get launched, etc. I mean, to give credit, I think there is life beyond Excel, and I think all of us have to accept and understand the gut and how do numbers speak. What's all the thesis behind that number is what we need to understand. What's the level of, if I may call it, the margin of error on the upside and downside both. And when you speak with more experienced people as a taker, I think we need to appreciate what the other person is saying. And in this case, it was difficult to substantiate a selling price of 35,000-40,000 rupee per square feet, which is a South Bombay project. I remember once it was launched, it was getting sold at 60,000, and this is just about 3 years back project. The promoters there, because there was just so much of conviction, and I think it comes from real data and not the Excel data, and that's where one needs to engage with the stakeholders to appreciate. One may come with a very strong view, but over time when you're looking at what is behind it is when you get to see behind what is the Excel. So that's where I think as senior leaders we evolve, and I would say that yes, over time one has evolved. Now coming back to say Tata ecosystem, things are very different. And every director, be it an executive director or an independent director, they come with their own views, and engaging with them, explaining them, because in like my board members, some of them have very extensive real estate investment experience. One of them is very, very sophisticated finance person with an IMA grad background. So there, when you engage with them, there's always a point of view. And I think as a finance person, I think there's always something to learn from anybody. So there, it's not about taking a bold decision, but it is about collaborating and coming together to justify or to explain or highlight why is a person thinking what he's thinking, and then come to a conclusion. That's how I would sum it up.
So, very wisely said that in every boardroom there comes a moment where a spreadsheet ends and judgment begins. So, in that scenario, no doubt you have a number in place, but the certainty is not. That's why the real leadership of the CXO people play a pivotal role in navigating through this phase. So, now let's hear it from Naresh.
Yeah, so I would like to tell this with as a practical example we have faced. So a year back, we have been assigned a transaction where we have to advise a client on a capital raise. He already had a term sheet in his hand, and it was a convertible round. And the investor was taking around 35% stake in the company. And we were later engaged once he has a term sheet, whether he should accept the term sheet or not accept the term sheet. And at that point in time, since it was a convertible round, the conversion was based on the future EBITDA, which was supposed to be coming in the current year. The company was doing 90% business on the export, 55% was the export to US. And at that point in time, we were gone through the entire exercise, and we advised the board to walk away with the offer, not to accept that offer. And I think because of the Trump tariff, if they would have accepted this offer, and I think the sales of the US would have gone down, and the transaction would have resulted into the change of control itself. So the 35% would have become the 60% in the company. And at that point in time, we have taken the decision. We have advised the client not to go ahead with the offer. And we are closing that transaction, I think, now at the similar kind of a 30-35% stake, and not at a convertible kind of a structure. So at that point, I've walking away with an offer, advise the client to walk away with the offer is a courageous decision. Some time need to be taken as an advisor when you are wearing an advisory hat.
So very rightly said. Because of this, you can say that you can say that very nimble with the numbers is critically important, because the kind of a tariff war, West Asia crisis, now people are seeing it's more like a T20 match. People are seeing the dollar and rupee exchange rate more than the T20 match scoreboard. So you have to be very relevant in these kind of scenario, because staying relevant is critically important. What is relevant yesterday may not be relevant tomorrow. So now coming to that, India has witnessed multiple cases where companies with a large balance sheets, good reputation, and even a large auditors on the board, but still collapse due to governance failure. So the real question here is that the governance failure is a system failure, or the people in the boardroom stop asking uncomfortable questions. So what is your view on it, Raghav?
All governance failures have not happened because of a lack of control. That is, I don't want to bore the audience at 9:15 with data, but if you take the last 20 years, there has never been a failure of control.
Okay.
What has happened is control has got bent. So there have been rules, and those rules have got bent. Unfortunately, what we tend to do is we create rules in bad times. I think what boards, my experience with very smart boards is that they create very clear line markers, like what you have here, right?
Yeah.
There is a line marker here saying don't go beyond this because otherwise you'll fall down. Those line markers have to be drawn in paint, bright paint, when things are actually in good shape. And I think then the second thing I think which the board needs to do really carefully is how do they treat a culture of non-compliance. Again, that's something that's very critical, because if you have a culture which says that, hey, I'll inflate a sales bill, ye chalta hai. I'll do some small stuff, ye chalta hai. Then you expect that when bad times, that culture will really hurt you in a really big way, because small deviations will lead to large deviations. So I think where my experience of great organizations is that they've actually done this well in very good times, and then obviously taken a very, very tough stand on deviations, especially. And as you know, we're all in the business and financial services, at least 3 of us here, and trust is extremely critical. So sometimes just walking away from a transaction, my board always tells me on a 1,300 crore PAT, if we make a 20 crore extra revenue, it's not going to really change the balance sheet. But if that 20 crore results in some sort of a loss or any reputation, it can set you back 5-7 years. That's very, very critical. And some of these things are important to do. So the message is do it in good times. Don't start thinking of compliance in bad times.
Absolutely.
Right.
So reputational risk is critically important in these days, and never compromise on the process part of it. So Jugalji, what is your view on it? Because we have seen in a history a lot of cases like Yes Ban fiasco, ILNFS, HDL, and the list goes on. So does you can say that governance is a kind of a system failure, or a lot of people in the boardroom stop asking whether ये होना चाहिए या नहीं होना चाहिए?
Frankly speaking, it's a combination of all.
Okay.
Because whatever name which you have taken, we can kill, like in last 10 years, all of us who are sitting here, they have got experience individually also more than 10, 15, 20 years, and the name which have failed, be it ILFS, Yes Bank, Satyam, you name PMC Bank, there are n number of failures which you have seen. Every failure had a specific ingredient. Somewhere there were cases of excessive leveraging. Somewhere there were cases of concentrated risk.
Even related party transactions?
Related party transactions. Somewhere they were like verification related errors. So what is important is, but in every such case, like the company is just like a body. Okay. If there is something wrong in your body, it will give you some signal. You will have fever, you will have something. Okay. The important thing is, do you immediately approach someone, okay, and find solution to that? So similarly, in all these cases which you have named, be it Satyam, be it ILFS, be it PMC Bank, there were murmurs of failure or a crash. were there in the market. Okay. It was not like that, that all of a sudden one day you got up and then you realized that X company has failed. It has never happened.
Correct.
So what is important is these things gradually build into the system.
So it is a collusion. It is a collusion kind
Yeah,
of thing.
either collusion or oversight.
Yeah, it is.
So what you say is very right, that the people who were supposed to play important role of governance, somewhere they have failed. And that is the finding which has come in each and every case.
You can say that. There can be a reason towards it.
Yeah, I don't see any exception where any such large corporate have failed without any ignorance or overlooking of the matter. And as I said, that these symptoms comes few years before. Even the key employees, they know. Then you will see that the employees are leaving those organizations before the crash happens. You take any such instances, you will find that the KMPs, they have left the organization few years before. So what I'm trying to say is that when failure happens, it gives the symptoms. What is important is that the people who are responsible or at the helm of affair, they have failed to take corrective actions at time.
So very well said, Jugalji. So what is your view on it, the governance issues and failure, Dilip bhai?
Thanks, Anand. I think it's in having been part of some of the marquee organizations. I think it's about DNA of the organization and
Absolutely.
the sponsor. What flows from the top to the everyone in the organization. I think, and as CAs, I think we are in the best time zone that we are working in this country with the way we are growing. As chartered accountants, we should not compromise, because I think it's always, one can always change the way you want to project things, and it can be interpreted differently. But not compromising on quality, what is right has to be done rightly, are the most important aspects. And that's what will take people to the next level, as in including organizations, and including, in fact, I just to tell you some data point in real estate, the size which is there by the top 20 real estate developers, which used to be there 10, 15 years back versus now. There's so much of institutionalization that is happening, and so many promoters in the country now are accepting that it is about you do the right things, you will automatically get the premium. And it's already the 13% or 14%, which was the market share of the top few guys, has now become like a 22, 25%. So people, there are enough people to pay the price, but yes, deliver the things rightly. And I think that is where this industry is at least changing significantly. And the power of following rules, sponsors are accepting and acknowledging that.
So very rightly said that it's all about the DNA of your company. That's why I always say that the boardroom decisions define the legacy of your organization. So now let's hear it from Naresh.
So Anand, I think I rightly agree with what Jugalji has said. I think governance failure is the biggest failure. If money is lost, I think nothing is lost. Opportunity is lost, something is lost. But if reputation is lost, everything is lost. Absolutely. I think most important parameter to judge a company or judge a board or judge a governance structure of an organization is a governance or as a trust. If trust and governance is compromised, then everything is compromised. That's my view.
So now, considering the last, it's a kind of a rapid fire question. So with coming to this AI, automations, people are saying that AI ka to boom hai, but I'm just imagining that it's just the beginning of this AI era. It's going to be there. So what are the key traits of people must have so that they can come fit to the role of the CXO's level? What is your view on it?
I think you have to be curious and you have to be very resilient in today's market. I think for me, resilience is important. Coming to office every day, working, irrespective of how the previous day has been, whatever you're reading, seeing, hearing in the press, about your company, about your sector, doesn't make a difference. If you come in every day with a positive attitude and you are very curious and you're open to change, and then more importantly, at our level as CEOs, we have to drive that change. Okay. So I think that's the most important job that we do. So if we say that many people talked about AI here, I think if I don't personally drive that myself, I cannot expect my staff or my colleagues to do it. It's very clear. And there are certain things that you must understand, like I'm a dinosaur as far as AI is concerned. I mean, I think I'll be much, much worse than my like somebody was saying here, 21-year-old kid will teach me, but I have the curiosity to learn, and then more importantly, the will to implement it. And I think that's what AI doesn't do for you. So you take that trait, you learn it a little bit, you see how you can apply it. If you think it makes sense, then you drive it across the organization, and then you do that again and again and again. And that's what makes
So
it rich.
it's more about consistency and having the habit of traveling extra mile and whatever the work you do. So Jugal bhai, what is your view on it? What are the key traits of future aspiring CFO, CXO level people must have whenever it comes to the boardroom?
See, it's a very important question because the whole role of CXOs, or when we talk about the CFO, it has undergone sea change. Earlier, the CFO used to be just guardian of numbers or the finance. Now things have changed. And the way AI has become such a big buzzword, what is important, even if somebody is using AI, there are few things which only human can do. And that is where the CFO's role is there. Even if you are using AI, you must ask a right question. But that is very, very important. Because if you ask a vague question to AI, you will get a vague answer.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have to be very right, means you must ask the right question, and that can come only by experience. Then thereafter, whatever results is populated, you need to validate that. Again, for that reason, for that purpose, you need to have the human intelligence as well as the experience that are you in a right position to validate whatever has come up by throwing your queries or generating your queries. Once that comes, then what is important is building the model, checking the sanctity of model, and then once you check that model and then effectively use that information, you can definitely do wonders. And you can keep yourself with the changing environment, in the automated environment, and instead of being guardian of the numbers or the finance, you can play a strategic role in decision making at the corporate sector.
So very rightly said that being a chartered accountant, we have to navigate through the uncertainties because a lot of times it's not about CA restrict themselves to the numbers. Even when the visibility is limited, it is the chartered accountant conviction who always sail through the whole organization. So now let's hear it from the Dilip.
I'll keep it simple.
Yeah.
I think when looking at AI plus how do we run the department, at least for me, it's only finance right now. But yeah, at least believe on the new age kids. I think I've always felt the younger generation is more intelligent than the one that has just passed on. So they bring the ideas that they bring in, the way to think that they come back. You need to really challenge them and understand the point of view. I think they bring the real new blood in the system to think critically and question what is happening. Second is always question what is already happening and don't assume it is right. And I always appreciate my team to say, boss, don't accept what is happening. Just please get into the last end of it on from where it is originating and then at least learn that process. I would just want to add to Sridhar's point also that the learning part should never stop. I love this and I like this saying also is 1% increase every day, 1.01 to the power 365 is a number which is
The compounding
huge. And versus 0.99 to the power 365 is very different. So I think it could, as an anecdote, the energy to say that, yes, I want to do something more, that urge, desire, I think that is what one should keep on trying to pursue.
So very rightly said that, Dilip. See, nowadays, the seniority of any person is diluting day by day if that person is not evolved with the times. So now, Naresh, you want to add anything?
I would like to answer this in context of the chartered accountants. Actually, AI will not replace chartered accountants, but a chartered accountant who use AI will replace chartered accountant. And a chartered accountant who use AI with judgment will replace both. So AI, I think, can replace the commoditized task, a reconciliation, a model preparation, maybe drafting, but AI cannot use that report to go against the regulator, sit in front of the regulator and debate on it, right? So that's where our role is. Our role is value chain, upscaling the value chain. We are advisory layer over and above the manual work. The manual work can be replaced by the AI, but advisory layer cannot be replaced by the AI. That's where human beings will be relevant. A CFO who treats AI as a back office tool maybe get replaced, but a CFO who is treating a AI tool as a co-pilot and is using it as analytical tools maybe will lead the future. That's about the usage of the AI.
Very rightly said that this whole session is about capital, courage, control across the boardroom. But going now, I will add 2 more C's by listening to all this distinguished leader on the dais is like critical thinking is important. At the same time, clear conscience in your decision making is important. So I will open this forum to all of you. If you have any specific questions to ask from the veterans of the industry, then please ask.
Yes, we can have 1 or 2 questions. So we open the floor for questions, please.
I think we're standing between them and dinner. Maybe we can. Yeah, okay, good.
So greetings everyone, I'm CA Aryan Bohra. I had an opportunity to meet outside Raghav sir as well. Very rightly said that the courage to say no for a company that has gone to NCLT going forward. So indeed it would have a lot of due diligence and everything would have done. But कितनी बार मन में होता है कि जो founders हैं उन पे call ले लें. तो वो call क्यों नहीं लेना and वो क्या perspective रहता है at that investment time, moment of investing that money?
I think past behavior is important. That's. I think past behavior is very, very important as to how that promoter has behaved. How they treat minority shareholders is very, very critical. And lastly, of course, I think in an audience, and this is where I think the information world really helps you, because what you say, do 5 years back gets recorded some part of the internet. And earlier we used to have difficulty finding it, but as the session has proved in the last 3 hours, I think you have enough tools now to figure out what somebody has said.
Just for my inquisition, sorry to interrupt. अगर वो 5 साल बाद कंपनी अच्छा परफॉर्म कर जाती तो जो regret आता then?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
If after 5 years, if that company could have given a good returns.
Okay, that's all right. I mean, as I said, I think the courage to say no is critical. In hindsight, is 6x6 vision. You'll never figure it out.
And undoubtedly, it's never.
India is the land of opportunity, boss. You miss one, you get one more. Don't worry. That's all.
But always remember that your history matters wherever you go, basically. Even though you get a good at a time, but your bad time is always in your books. So always be on the good side always. That's what I say.
Thank you.
Anything? Anyone else? Yeah.
Hello, sir. Myself, Manoj Ajmera. We got a deep insight on how the digital AI is impacting the business and how senior management, CXOs and CFOs are taking decision considering the digital AIs. Now, I would like to understand the impact of physical AI. Down the line, after 5 years, 6 years, the physical AI is going to be a new trend. We can see digital AI may how it has impacted a credit evaluation. It has impacted, providing productivity, efficiency on the platter when it comes to MIS or any kind of reporting. But when the physical AI is going to come down the line 5-6 years, probably it may sell house properties to customer directly. We can see a lot of development and initiative is happening at the robotics sector. So physical AI may be the new trend down the line. So how it is going to be impacting our business and your views on the same on the physical AI?
I will simply say, as a finance professional, even if the physical AI comes, you will make your business more profitable because your cost of execution, that will drop drastically. So I think you should look forward to such opportunity and encase that and think around to how do you make best use of such opportunity which comes up in time to come.
So very rightly said that because no doubt the physical AI will drastically see change in all the banking branch operations and all. There will be no more branches exist. in case if the physical AI integration happens, but always understand that the human capital will always play a pivotal role. And one who understand and change their self with the current times, it will sail through the whole ecosystem.
So what a brilliant panel it was. Requesting everyone to carry a round of applause. Because friends, why the balance matters? Because capital without courage leads to stagnation. Courage without control leads to reckless decision, and control without capital limits growth and innovation. And capital provides capability, courage drives transformation, and control ensures sustainability and trust. And we had indeed a brilliant panelist in a form of CA Jugal Mantri sir, Raghav Iyengar sir, Dilip Agrawal sir, Naresh Biani sir, and fantastic moderator Anand Lulkar sir, who told us how to navigate uncertainties, why a younger generation is more intelligent, and why, because their why, what's, and hows are very clear. And reputation and governance is lost, everything is lost, money is lost, yes, still we can, manage and earn it. So with this, we extend our sincere gratitude to all our learned panelists and a moderator, requesting everyone to carry a round of applause. And sincere gratitude to our dynamic chairman, Sir C.A. Saurabh Ajmera, for this fantastic day with power-packed leaders. We would also like to thank our sponsors, Naresh Biani ji from Capwise and all other sponsors also. Thanks to WIRC staff and entire team for being all day around. And again, deepest gratitude to all our participants and members, looking forward for your collective contribution for the profession. Thank you once again, looking forward. Friends, would also like to recognize the presence of CAIRS Sarika Jain Madam, Joint Commissioner of Income Tax.